Now, across Texas, the issue is...
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
I'm Greg Groogan in Houston.
And I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas, and this is Texas, the issue is.
Leaders of the Texas House this week are facing a very big decision after last week's pressure-packed school choice rally and a marathon committee hearing on HB 3, the House version of school choice. Now, it's clear for any plan to make it to the governor's desk, some backroom compromising, it's going to have to be done. And the groundwork for that starts right now. Mandy Drugan, the campaign director of Next Generation Texas at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, sat down with me, and we discussed this big moment for this big issue.
Critical. It's critical that all lawmakers realize that we can empower parents to make the best decision for their child and love their child and know where they should be going to school and empower them to make that choice.
I think the voucher thing makes us admit that we don't know how to fix public schools.
Is this a punt on public education?
Absolutely not. I'm a public school parent myself. We have to acknowledge that there are 50% of the children in our classroom right now that cannot read on grade level. And that's been going on for over a decade. I respect Representative Dutton greatly. We heard it 2 years ago in the same hearing asking that. This is not in any way saying that public schools should not be fully funded and lifted up. It means that every single parent should be in charge and that a one-size-fits-all system based simply on the street that you live on does not serve every child.
And I do believe this. One of the basic principles of this country is competition. And competition does make everything stronger and better. And this will not only help parents, it will make public education stronger because of competition in it.
But this current plan isn't every parent. It really isn't universal. The only universal is the application process, not the selection process.
The eligibility.
Eligibility. So very limited number of people who are actually going to benefit from this program. So again, why not?
I wouldn't say it's limited. 100,000 children will have access.
5 million. Children.
Sure. So let's be clear. We can do both. We can say we want to do, and their HB2 has about $8 billion more dollars. We are going to spend more than $100 billion.
Opponents will say that that's just a buy down. That's buying down the tax rate, and it's really not giving new money.
Well, the opponents that say that is completely incorrect. There are two different pieces of legislation.
So is it a labeling problem that people are missing here? That, all right, it's not necessarily...
It's not a labeling problem. It's not a voucher, which is what opposition likes to use. No, an education savings account allows parents to truly customize their child's education. It's not a scholarship.
Will it be perfect? No. But will they have more options? Will they have them everywhere? No, not immediately. I represent 44 school districts and over 14 counties. There are places where they won't be able to be used, more than likely. It may only be one county with 245 people. The only option may be online in that county. But am I going to take options away from somebody who truly needs it because it's not perfect? No.
There is not going to be a mass exodus from our public school system. So claiming that it's not truly universal is false. Eligibility, every single child in the state of Texas is eligible. Now, the appropriation is where that you're talking about. There is $1 billion appropriated this year. That would be enough for approximately 100,000 students whose families needed another choice. And then there's the prioritization. As we've heard in the committee, it is prioritized for our low and middle income families as well as our special education students.
Is the plan to come back later and create more money, and is that contingent on the surplus?
At this moment, yeah, absolutely. It's contingent on demand.
Well, that certainly was a scaled-down version of a very spirited discussion that we had. So I'm going to go with 2 words, not one, for this issue: zealous and diverting. Stephen, give me a word or a sentence.
A word or a sentence. Mine is victory lap, because that's what Governor Abbott's going to be doing when this passes.
Greg, how about a word for you?
All right, Rudy, my word is miniature, as in the scale of this proposal.
Well, with that, we will take a small break. And when we come back, the Texas Trio will discuss the challenges ahead for school choice. All right, welcome back. The Senate and House school choice plans are like westbound and eastbound trains speeding headlong on the same track. Mandy Drogan doesn't believe that there is a labeling problem with school choice and with how the two plans are being pitched. I do. Greg, are supporters in Houston really buying into her definition of universal and that they only understand that it applies only to the application, not the award?
Rudy, I think most folks in Houston are just waiting until the smoke clears to see what's really on the table. Both the House and Senate versions of choice are pretty modest and targeted, with most of the money earmarked for special needs and low-income families. That means nearly all the families currently attending private schools will be vying for just a share of $250 million. I think it's also clear the fairly modest $1 billion starting point blows up all the apocalyptic hyperbole we've heard from Democrats about the impact this choice program will have on public ed funding. Public schools are set to get around $90 billion this session. Repeat, $90 billion. So all that welfare for the wealthy rap is pretty disingenuous and overblown. To your point, Rudy, these versions of choice are basically Texas-sized pilot programs, and whether Democrats want to admit it or not, $1 billion is a little more than a rounding error within this massive budget.
I agree with you that I think the Democrats are missing the point and missing the mark on their arguments. I disagree. I still think $1 billion is a lot of money. Now, open enrollment and universal acceptance, clearly two very different things. Stephen, I think school choice advocates are setting themselves up for pushback. Or do you agree that, this is only going to just help expand this limited entitlement program later down the road?
I mean, we're looking at the interim and what's to come in the short term, and then the balloon that some Democrats are predicting with the budget in the next biennium, right? And so the interim, Republicans are going to agree on something. It has to go to, it's likely going to go to a Congress committee because the House and Senate versions are different in their tiered system of payment. But in the interim, I mean, conservatives who support it are just trying to get this through. Now, there will be some fine tuning, and I think some lawmakers who support this have said in the past that there's going to be some changes that will be made down the line. The question is, Republicans are saying, let us pass this so we can pass more public school funding and more teacher pay. Democrats are doing what they have to do in the minority. They're still trying to fight it, but I think if teacher pay increases and school funding increases, like everyone keeps saying it will, we might not hear as much complaints about the program.
Certainly there is a lot of emotion in play on all sides of this issue, which is why my first word is zealous. But no matter the spin, this is also a budget move that diverts the state surplus, my other word. Greg, Houston Democrat Harold Dutton made a very good point during the hearings on Tuesday. Are lawmakers really just punting on education, public education?
Rudy, I wouldn't call a $90 billion appropriation punting on public ed. Guys, that's 35% of the state budget. Public schools aren't going anywhere, just like they haven't in all the other states with choice programs, where after years, the number of kids accepting vouchers remain a fraction of the overall student population. Let's just call this what it is, an old-fashioned pitched battle for money, pitting teachers' unions and school superintendents against privatization advocates and religious conservatives. Lastly, there's that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Why are choice opponents demanding parents pay taxes and then send their kids to mediocre or flat-out failing schools where their kids can't thrive? Praying for improvement can't hurt, but is that really a strategy when your child's future is on the line?
Stephen, with the Senate, you mentioned this earlier, it's probably going to go to conference committee. Does the Senate have any chips to play in this thing?
I mean, the Senate, they're not worried about, they know that they have all the votes. The House, it looks like the House has the votes. It's a matter of what this tiered system will look like as we wrap up. I know that the House has a more tiered system. The Senate is an 80-20 split. And so it's a matter of who wins on that definition of who gets what.
Yeah, I think this week is going to really tell how this thing and which train is going to hit, or are they going to avoid and link up on the same track heading in the same direction down the road. All right, we're going to wrap it up with that.
Okay, after the break, we're focusing on the nation's capital, where the president is imposing what amounts to a death sentence on the Department of Education. Welcome back. True to his campaign promise, President Donald J. Trump has very rapidly taken a wrecking ball to the U.S. Department of Education, with the stated intention of transferring many of the agency's duties back to the states. Here in Texas, many of those who advocate for students, both able and disabled, believe no good and plenty of bad will be the end result. Team Trump clearly taking a chainsaw to the Department of Education, slicing off half of the agency's workforce as a prelude to eliminating much of DOE's decades-old mission and transferring what can't be outright abolished to other branches of government. Among the biggest concerns among educators here in Texas is the $16 billion DOE distributes through Title I, a program designed to help economically disadvantaged students in Texas and across the nation. Children at Risk Chief Executive Dr. Bob Sanborn advocates for kids across the Lone Star State.
Ideally, right, education is the thing that pulls kids out of poverty. And when we're talking about Texas, 65% of our kids are living in low-income families. And so Title I and all the programs that help those 65% of kids, the majority of our kids in Texas, helps them succeed. You know, if those go out the window, that's a big hit for Texas, right? That's a hit on our workforce, our future workforce, but more importantly, it's our children. So when we look at our campuses, we see that a lot of those campuses get federal funds. You know, about 10% of the funds that most of our campuses get come from the federal government. So if those are to be cut, you know, I don't see the state sort of stepping up and saying, okay, we're going to give you 10% more. They're already behind the ball, the state is, in regards to giving some of this money away. I don't envy the job of superintendents trying to figure out where all this money that's not coming anymore, how you're going to replace it. It's going to be hard on our kids.
Dr. Sanborn also deeply concerned about the likely elimination of Department of Education research, particularly data analysis of student knowledge attainment.
Or us being able to say we're doing better because it shows this, or we're going to do this because the research is pretty clear, this is how we get better. I think that's really, really important, right, that we have those metrics. Historically, federal governments all across the world, that's what they do. It makes us better. And I think for us not to have some of those metrics, I think it's, you know, we're not better off for it, we're worse off.
Meantime, another monster concern looming around the liquidation of DOE is the agency's critical role policing special education in all 50 states. You may remember back in 2018, it was the Department of Education which held the state of Texas accountable for improperly capping the number of disabled students receiving services, effectively shortchanging tens of thousands of children the vital therapies they were legally entitled to. Under this new administration, that enforcement responsibility would almost certainly shift out of DOE and potentially be abandoned altogether. Longtime special needs champion Louis Geigerman is president of the Texas Organization of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates.
The problem is you're not going to have a watchdog that's really going to have the interest of kids in special ed. And we've made so much progress in the 50 years that IDEA came into being. It's going to go, you know, I'm really fearful of what will happen down the pike.
Okay, Rudy, you heard the advocates. Is this a case of Chicken Little and the sky actually falling? Or can the states actually take over DOE's responsibilities?
Well, first of all, how dare you take my word away, Chicken Little. That's exactly what I was thinking and listening to those comments. Certainly the sky is falling approach with these individuals and these experts. You know, let's start with the very first thing. One, the money is not going away. The agency may go away, but the money isn't going away. The money that the agency, this mega federal agency that's been in play for decades now, that's going away. The money, the plan is the money goes to the states, and the states cutting out the middleman. So I think that we got to get past that part of the argument. Otherwise, people aren't going to be listening. The other part is who's going to advocate? Well, the Department of Justice advocates. The Department of Justice hammered the state of Texas in regards to kids with dyslexia just a few months ago in regards to, making sure that in taking a test, kids, the students with dyslexia have certain aspects of being able to take the test by, having someone reading the questions to them along that line. So there will be advocates. I think right now people need to calm down a little bit, take a breath, and let's see how this goes. But I will agree with the one aspect and how you set this whole up. Trump has been taking this thing with the chainsaw. That concerns a lot of people. Recent polls out show that. Greg?
All right, Stephen, do you think the Department of Education is expendable? I mean, collectively, the parents of kids with special needs form a pretty significant voting bloc.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a concern. And I talked to some of the workers in the Dallas region office who were let go this past week, and most of them were from the Office of Civil Rights. One thing they said was the Dallas region office handled some of the most complaints in the country just because the Dallas region covers such a broad area where complaints are. And one of the workers who was let go, a union worker, she told me that they served as basically the accountability part of things. And I just think, I know you two guys know, but I think there's some misinformation or a disconnect where people aren't truly understanding the role of some of these federal workers. Should some of the bureaucracy be cut out? Sure. But I think the narrative that these federal employees are controlling what our students are learning in classrooms, that's kind of far from the truth. States, by and large, cover a lot of the control of the school process, the public school process, and the oversight, the resources for special needs and poverty schools. That's what that backstop at the DOE served as. So we'll have to wait and see how this thing shakes out.
All right, Rudy, you've been covering the TEA that's the Texas Education Agency, for decades now. Do you believe they can pick up the enforcement load? About 30 seconds.
They have an enforcement section in TEA right now. I know that they do work those issues. So I'm going to say, let's see. Let's give them a shot. And of course, it all hinges on the legislature too and funding that aspect of TEA.
Well, the show's almost over, but when we come back, we've got issues. We'll see you in a second. All right, this is starting to be my favorite segment, is We've Got Issues. I know it's about any issue, so I'm gonna take this time to talk about basketball. Now, March Madness is great, but that's not what I'm talking about. Are the Dallas Mavericks cursed? That's my issue. Ever since Luka got traded to the Lakers, things have been a little finicky. Kyrie Irving out
cursed
for the year. Anthony Davis out. I mean, everyone is out. The Mavs are just a shell of a team, and things were going well under Mark Cuban. You can't knock him on that. So that's my issue. People in Dallas are still pissed. Nico Harrison is booed in any building that he enters. They were doing fire Nico chants at the SMU game, at hockey games. I just feel for the guy, but man, let the NBA season hurry up and end. Greg?
All right, I got an issue with every stinking tree in the greater Houston area all kicking out pollen at one time. Man, these allergies are working me over like a borrowed mule. 8 days and they're not letting up. I mean, we can cure all these diseases, but we got nothing that's helping me. I'm angry and I got an issue with the trees.
All right, I got issues with the governor trying to be Trump and ordering everybody back to work. Boy, the traffic, the gridlock in Austin the past couple of days, a freaking nightmare. And I blame Greg Abbott for this by making everybody come back to the office and work. Come on, at least there are some people that can work remotely. Hopefully all those individuals live in the part of town that I live in and they can get off the roadways, stay home, work at home, don't go to your office, work at home and stay off the roads. That's my issue. All right, with that, we're going to wrap everything up. You can see this portion on all our social media sites and our YouTube pages.
Yeah, and be sure and keep the conversation going by talking to us on social media.
A lot is happening in Austin. Will the House pass school vouchers? What else is lurking behind door number 3? You have to find out when you join us, same time, same place, on Texas, The Issue Is.